It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, it is the one most responsive to change. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. I love fools' experiments, I am always making them. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. It is not the conscience which raises a man above the animal world, but the intellect, in alliance with a human heart. A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions and their motives, of approving of some and disapproving of others. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. I have called this principle, by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved, by the term of natural selection. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. We can allow satellites, planets, suns, universe, nay whole systems of universes, to be governed by laws, but the smallest insect we wish to be created at once by special act. If the misery of our poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. Man is descended from a hairy-tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. I feel most deeply that this whole question of creation is too profound for human intellect. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. Man tends to increase at a greater rate than his means of subsistence. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. In the long history of humankind and animal kind, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. Man in his arrogance thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. It is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change. I am turned into a sort of machine for observing facts and grinding out conclusions. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. How paramount the future is to the present when one is surrounded by children. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. I have called this principle, by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved, by the term of natural selection. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. On the ordinary view of each species having been independently created, we gain no scientific explanation. My theology is a simple muddle. I cannot look at the universe as the result of blind chance. Yet, I can see no evidence of beneficent design. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble qualities still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. In the survival of favored individuals and races, during the constantly recurring struggle for existence, we see a powerful and ever-acting form of selection. In the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals, because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment